Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Kính thưa đại chúng, trước khi bắt đầu hành lễ, kính mời đại chúng cùng ngồi tĩnh tâm vài phút. Giờ đây kính mời đại chúng chọn một thế ngồi thật là vững chãi, thật là thoải mái. Before we begin our service, we invite you to sit quietly in a posture that is stable and comfortable. Relaxing your shoulders, closing your eyes. Mời đại chúng cùng buông thư toàn thân. Giờ đây kính mời đại chúng cùng giữ im lặng. So please keep silent for a quiet sitting. At this moment, we invite you to focus onto your breathing. Breathing in, I am aware I am breathing in. Breathing out, I am aware that I am breathing out. In, out. Giờ đây kính mời đại chúng cũng để chú tâm vào hơi thở vào, hơi thở ra. Thở vào, con ý thức, con đang thở vào. Thở ra, con ý thức, con đang thở ra. Vào, ra. You may also recite the Buddha's name with your in-breath and your out-breath. Breathing in, A-di. Breathing out, Da-Phật. Thở vào, A-di. Thở ra, Da-Phật. A-di, Da-Phật. Kính mời đại chúng nghe 3 tiếng chuông để bắt đầu buổi ngồi tĩnh tâm. At this moment, we invite you to listen to the 3 sounds of the bell for our quiet sitting meditation. Breathing in, I'm only aware of my in-breath. Breathing out, I am only aware of my out-breath. Only in-breath, only out-breath. Thở vào, con chỉ ý thức về hơi thở vào. Thở ra, con chỉ ý thức về hơi thở ra. Chỉ có hơi thở vào, chỉ có hơi thở ra. Breathing in, my breath becomes more peaceful. Breathing out, I smile to my peaceful breath. Breath peaceful, smiling. Thở vào, hơi thở vào trở nên bình an. Thở ra, mỉm cười với hơi thở bình an. Hơi thở bình an, mỉm cười. open your eyes and massage your feet if you like. Kính thưa đại chúng, xin nhắc đại chúng để giữ đạo tràng được thanh tịnh và trang nghiêm. Mời đại chúng tắt phone hay là đổi lại chế độ room. So to keep the atmosphere serene, please turn off, silence your phone. Thank you.
phát quyển kinh và mở trang số 0. Please pass out the chanting book and turn to page 0. Trầm hương đôn sống ngạc mười phương, nguyện kính đức nghiêm từ vô lượng, cầu xin chứng tâm thành chúng con. Vầng khói kết mây lành cúng dường, đạo nhiệm màu đã lan truyền nơi cùng nơi. Nhờ chân lý chúng sanh đều thoát luân hồi, đồng quy kinh quỳ dưới đại sen. Dân đó thơm tinh khiết màu thắm tươi cành, đại quang minh sáng huy hoàng trang nghiêm. Ở mười phương điều ngự hào quang an lành, nhìn đạo uyển chuyển soi khắp cùng quần sanh. Phật đạo đồng cùng nhau tu tinh thân mau viễn thành. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Xin cho khói trầm thơm kết thành mây năm sắc, dâng lên khắp mười phương cúng dường vô lượng Phật, vô lượng chư Bồ Tát, cùng chư thánh hiền tăng nơi pháp giới dung thông, kết đài sen rực rỡ. Nguyện làm bạn đồng hành trên con đường giác ngộ. Xin mọi loài chúng sanh từ bỏ cõi vô minh, theo đường giới định tuệ, quay về trong tỉnh thức. Chúng con kính dâng hương cúng dường lên Phật và chư vị Bồ Tát. Hôm nay đệ tử chúng con vẫn tập về Bảo Điện tu viện Trúc Lâm, dâng nén tâm hương cúng dường ba ngôi vô thường, xin ôn tụng lời Phật dạy. Tu tập các hành lành, chuyển hóa khổ đau, chế tác an lạc. Xin đem công đức lành này, nguyện cầu cho thế giới hòa bình, chúng sanh an lạc. Cửa thiền thánh tình, đại chúng an hòa. Đạo pháp cụ trụ ta bà, giáo hóa chúng sanh. Lại trong pháp duyên này, xin kỳ siêu cho các hương linh. Tân Hoa Cố La Mộc Lan, pháp danh Từ Hiền An, hương linh Hoàng Thị Phỉnh, pháp danh Nguyên Châu. Huỳnh Tân Tri, pháp danh Minh Thiện, Trịnh Căn Trung Mỹ Châu. Lê Minh, pháp danh Trúc Đào, La Hữu Phương, La Khoan. Nguyện Thị Minh, Nguyện Hữu Đức, pháp danh Minh Siêu. Lê Thành Thọ, pháp danh Tuệ Dần. Triệu Khánh Toàn, Lâm Kim Bút, Lưu Lan, Vòng Tắc Minh, Phan Thị Phạm Thị Hường, pháp danh Diệu Hoa. Nguyện thị lành pháp danh ngộng thắng độ, thị lợi pháp danh độ huyết, phạm thị hưởng pháp danh diệu lạc. Nguyện minh thi pháp danh diệu ngọc, trần kiển tinh pháp danh huệ nhàn, dương long thái pháp danh quang bảo an. Nguyện thị hoa tiết thị cùng tất cả chướng linh nam nữ, ký tự tại tu viện Trúc Lâm, tịnh kỳ siêu hương linh độ huỳnh kim vi. Trường nhờ tam bảo lực chư hương linh, nghe kinh thính pháp nghiệp chướng tiêu trừ, vàng sanh tịnh độ. Thử hồi hướng công đức kỳ nguyện, kỳ an hiện tiền chư đệ tử chúng con cùng thân bằng quyến thuộc. Nương nhờ tam bảo lực thân tâm an tịnh, khổ bệnh tiêu trừ, giả đạo bình an các tường như nguyện. Ngưỡng mong oai đức từ bi quan giang đạo tràng, chứng minh gia hộ. Nam mô hương cúng dường Bồ Tát, Nam mô chứng minh sư Bồ Tát, Nam mô đạo tràng hội thượng Phật Bồ Tát. Xin tốt như hoa sen rạng ngời như bắt đầu, xin quay về nương náu bậc thầy của nhân thiên. Nhưng tâm kinh lễ Phật pháp tăng thường trụ khắp mười phương. Những tâm kinh lễ Đức Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Thế Tôn. Những tâm kinh lễ liệt vì tổ sư qua các thời đại, từ Tây Trúc Việt Nam Đông độ đến hải ngoại. Kính mời đại chúng mở quyển kinh trang số 4. Please turn the chanting book to page 4. Nam mô tassa Nam mô tassa Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. The Dharma is deep and lovely. We now have a chance to see, study, and to practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning. Nam mô Đức Bổn Sư Bổn Thích Ca Mâu Ni. Nam mô Đức Bổn Sư Bổn Ca Mâu Ni. Nam mô Đức Bổn Sư Bổn Thích Ca Mâu Ni. Pháp Bổn Cao siêu mẫu nhiệm cơ duyên mấy đường thọ trì sinh nguyện tiến tuệ tinh thông giáo nghĩa thiên. Xin đại chúng lắng lòng nghe và chiêm nghiệm kinh 8 điều giác ngộ của các bậc đại nhân. Là đệ tử Phật thì nên hết lòng ngày cũng như đêm đọc tụng và quán niệm về 8 điều mà các bậc đại nhân đã giác ngộ. Điều thứ nhất là giác ngộ rằng cuộc đời là vô thường, chế độ chính trị nào cũng dễ sụp đổ. Những cấu tạo của 4 đại đều trống rỗng và có tác dụng gây đau khổ. Con người do tập hợp của 5 ấm mà có, lại không có thực ngã, sinh diệt thay đổi không ngừng, hư ngụy và không có chủ quyền. Trong khi đó, tâm ta lại là một nguồn suối phát sinh điều ác, và thân ta là một nơi tích tụ của tội lỗi. Quán chiếu như trên thì dần dần thoát được cõi sinh tử. Điều thứ hai là giác ngộ rằng càng lắm ham muốn thì lại càng nhiều khổ đau. Rằng bao nhiêu cực nhọc trong cõi sinh tử đều do ham muốn mà có. Trong khi đó, người ít ham muốn thì không bị hoàn cảnh sai sử, lại cảm thấy thân mình và tâm mình được thư thái. Điều thứ ba là giác ngộ rằng vì tâm ta rong ruổi chạy theo danh lợi không bao giờ biết chán, cho nên tội lỗi ta cũng theo đó mà càng ngày càng lớn. Các bậc Bồ Tát thì khác hẳn. Họ luôn luôn nhớ nghĩ đến phép tri túc, an vui sống đời đạm bạc để hành đạo, và xem sự nghiệp duy nhất của mình là sự thực hiện trí tuệ giác ngộ. Điều thứ tư là giác ngộ rằng thói quen lười biếng đưa đến chỗ đọa lạc. Vì vậy con người phải chuyên cần hành đạo, phá giặc phiền não, hàng phục 4 loài ma và ra khỏi ngục tù của 5 ấm và 3 giới. Điều thứ năm là giác ngộ rằng chính vì vô minh nên mới bị giam hãm trong cõi sinh tử. Các vị Bồ Tát thường xuyên nhớ rằng phải học rộng biết nhiều, phát triển trí tuệ, đạt được biện tài để giáo hóa cho mọi người, để cho tất cả đạt tới niềm vui lớn. Điều thứ sáu là giác ngộ rằng vì nghèo khổ cho nên người ta sinh ra có nhiều oán hận và căm thù, và vì thế lại tạo thêm những nhân xấu. Các vị Bồ Tát biết thế cho nên chuyên tu phép bố thí, coi kẻ ghét người thương như nhau, bỏ qua những điều ác mà người khác đã làm đối với mình, và không đem tâm ghét bỏ những ai đã làm ác. Điều thứ bảy là giác ngộ rằng 5 thứ dục vọng gây nên tội lỗi và hoạn nạn. Người xuất gia tuy sống trong thế tục nhưng không nhiễm theo cái vui phàm tục, thường quán niệm rằng tài sản của mình chỉ là 3 chiếc áo ca sa, và một chiếc bình bát, tất cả đều là pháp khí. Rằng chí nguyện xuất gia của mình là sống cho thanh bạch để hành đạo, giữ phạm hạnh cho thanh cao và đem lòng từ bi để tiếp xử với tất cả mọi người. Điều thứ 8 là giác ngộ rằng vì lửa sinh tử cháy bừng cho nên mọi loài đang chịu biết bao nhiêu điềm thống khổ. Biết vậy cho nên ta phải phát tâm đại thừa, nguyện cứu tế cho tất cả mọi người, nguyện thay thế cho mọi người mà chịu khổ đau vô lượng, khiến cho tất cả chúng sanh đều đạt tới niềm vui cứu cánh. 8 điều nói trên là những điều giác ngộ của các bậc đại nhân, Phật và Bồ Tát. Những vị này đã tinh tấn hành đạo, tu tập từ bi và trí tuệ, đã cởi thuyền pháp thân đến được bến Niết Bàn. Khi trở về lại cõi sinh tử độ thoát chúng sanh, các vị đều dùng 8 điều giác ngộ ấy để khai mở và chỉ đường cho mọi người, khiến cho tất cả chúng sanh ai cũng giác ngộ được cái khổ của sinh tử, lìa bỏ được ngũ dục và hướng tâm vào con đường thánh. Nếu đệ tử Phật mà thường đọc tụng 8 điều này thì mỗi khi quán niệm diệt được vô lượng tội, tiến tới giác ngộ, mau lên chính giác, vĩnh viễn đoạn tuyệt với sinh tử, thường trú trong sự an lạc.
Dear friends, please listen. The discourse on the 8 realizations of the great beings. Wholeheartedly, day and night, disciples of the Awakened One should recite and meditate on the 8 realizations discovered by the great beings. The first realization is the awareness that the world is impermanent. Political regimes are subject to fall. Things composed of the 4 elements are empty, containing within them the seeds of suffering. Human beings are composed of the 5 aggregates and are without a separate self. They are always in the process of change, constantly being born and constantly dying. They are empty of self and without a separate existence. The mind is the source of all confusion, and the body the forest of all unwholesome actions. Meditating on this, you can be released from the round of birth and death. The second realization is the awareness that more desire brings more suffering. All hardships in daily life arise from greed and desire. Those with little desire and greed are able to relax, their body and mind free from entanglement. The third realization is the awareness that the human mind is always searching outside itself and never feels fulfilled. This brings about unwholesome activity. Bodhisattvas, on the other hand, know the value of having few desires. They live simply and peacefully so that they can devote themselves to practicing the way. They regard the realization of perfect understanding to be their only career. The fourth realization is the awareness that indolence is an obstacle to practice. You must practice diligently to transform unwholesome mental states that bind you, and you must conquer the 4 kinds of Mara in order to free yourself from the prisons of the 5 aggregates and the 3 worlds. The fifth realization is the awareness that ignorance is the cause of the endless round of birth and death. Bodhisattvas always listen to and learn from others, so their understanding and skillful means can develop, and so they can teach living beings and bring them great joy. The sixth realization is the awareness that poverty creates hatred and anger, which creates a vicious cycle of negative thoughts and actions. When practicing generosity, Bodhisattvas consider everyone, friends and enemies alike, to be equal. They do not condemn anyone's past wrongdoings or hate even those presently causing harm. The seventh realization is the awareness that the 5 categories of sensual desire, money, sex, fame, overeating, and oversleeping, lead to problems. Although you are in the world, try not to be caught in worldly matters. A monk, for example, has in his possession only 3 robes and 1 bowl. He lives simply in order to practice the way. His precepts keep him free of attachment to the worldly things, and he treats everyone equally and with compassion. The 8th realization is the awareness that the fire of birth and death is raging. causing endless suffering everywhere. Take the great vow to help all beings, to suffer with all beings, and to guide all beings to the realm of great joy. These 8 realizations are the discoveries of the great beings, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, who have practiced diligently the way of understanding and love. They have sailed the Dharmakaya boat to the shore of Nirvana, and have then returned to the ordinary world, free of the 5 central desires, their minds and hearts directed toward the noble way. Using these 8 realizations, they help all beings recognize the suffering in the world. If disciples of the Buddha recite and meditate on these 8 realizations, they will put an end to countless misunderstandings and difficulties, and progress toward enlightenment, leaving behind the world of birth and death, dwelling forever in peace.
Xin đại chúng mở trang số 10. Please turn to page 10. Trang số 10. Beginning anew on page 10. Trang nghiêm đài sen ngự tòa đại hùng từ Phu Thích Ca đệ tử lắng lòng thánh tình bàn tay chấp thành liêu hoa cung kính hướng về điều ngự nhớ lời sám nguyện thiết tha đệ tử phước duyên tiêu kém sâu trong thơ niệm lâu dài không được sớm ngầm chánh pháp bao nhiêu phiền lụy đã gây bao nhiêu lỡ lòng phụ dài vô minh che lấp tháng ngày vườn tâm gieo hàng giống sâu tham sân tự ái dày đầy những nghiệp sắc đạo nhâm vòng gây nên từ trước đến nay những điều đã làm đã nói thường gây đổ vỡ hàng ngày bao nhiêu đạo phiền hiện trước nguyện xin sám hối từ đây để tự thấy mình ông nội con đường chánh niệm làm sao chân chưa vô minh phiền não tạo nên bao nỗi hận sầu có lúc tâm tư buồn chán mang đầy dạo hoặc lo âu vì không hiểu được kẻ khác cho nên hờn giận oán cừu lý luận xong rồi trách móc mỗi ngày mỗi chút khổ đau chia cánh nó kia càng lòng cõi này không nói với nhau cũng không muốn nhìn thấy mặt gây nên nỗi kết dài lâu để con hướng về tam bảo ăn năn khẩn thiết cúi đầu để tự biết trong tâm thức bao nhiêu hàng tốt lắm vui thương yêu hiểu biết và bao hạt giống an vui nhưng vì chưa biết tưới tẩm hạt lành không mọc tốt tươi cứ để khổ đau tràn lấp làm cho đen tối cuộc đời quen lối bỏ hình bắt bóng đuổi theo hạnh phúc xa vời tâm cứ bận về quá khứ hoặc lo rong rồi tương lai quanh quẩn trong vòng buồn giận xem thường bảo vật trong tay dày đạp lên trên hạnh phúc tháng năm sầu khổ thiệt mài giờ đây trầm sông bão điện con nguyện sám hối đổi thay để tự tâm thành 22. Bao nhiêu lầm lỗi cùng do tâm tình còn đâu dấu lỗi lầm. Sám hối xong rồi lòng nhẹ nhõm ngàn xưa mây bạc vần thông dong. Nam mô Bồ Tát cầu sám hối. Nam mô Bồ Tát cầu sám hối. Nam mô cầu sám vốn hối nguyện ngày an lành đêm an lành ngày đêm xảo thời điều an lành trong mọi giây mọi phút. Cầu ơn Tam Bảo luôn che chở. Nam mô Đức Bồ Tát tiêu tái kia tường. Nam mô Đức Bồ Tát tiêu tái giác kia tường. Nam mô Đức Bồ Tát tiêu tái giác kia tường. Con về nước tựa vùng người đưa được chỉ cho con trong cuộc đời. Con về nước tựa pháp con đường của tình và sự yêu biết. Con về nước tựa thắng đoàn thể của những người nguyện sống cuộc đời tỉnh thức trì tụng kinh thâm nhiều tạo công đức vô biên. Đệ tử xin hồi hướng cho chúng sanh mọi miền. Pháp môn xin nguyện học ơn nghĩa xin nguyện đền phiền não xin nguyện đó quả phụng xin chứng đến. Kính mời đại chúng xả chân, xỏ chân trước khi đứng dậy. Please massage your legs before we stand up.
So safe, we bow deeply to the three jewels in the 10 directions. Đệ tử chúng con nhân cha mẹ sanh thành quốc nhân bảo hộ. Cúi đầu kính lễ Tam Bảo thường trụ trong 10 phương. In gratitude to our ancestors, teachers, and friends who support us on our path, we bow deeply to the three jewels in the 10 directions. Đệ tử chúng con nhân sư trường giáo huấn liệt vì tịnh thí đàn đa. Cúi đầu kính lễ Tam Bảo thường trụ trong 10 phương. In gratitude to all beings in the animal, plant, and mineral worlds, we bow deeply to the three jewels in the 10 directions. Đệ tử chúng con nhân mọi loài chúng sanh cây cỏ đất đá. Cúi đầu kính lễ tam bảo thường trụ trong mười phương.
Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Kính bạch trên thầy, kính bạch quý thầy, quý sư cô và toàn thể đại chúng. Trước khi chúng ta bắt đầu buổi chia sẻ Phật pháp bằng tiếng Anh buổi sáng hôm nay, thì con kính mời đại chúng cùng chắp tay để chúng ta đồng niệm danh hiệu của Đức Bổn Sư 3 lần. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Good morning, dear respected Thầy, dear venerable monks, nuns, and dear friends. I hope you are having a good morning so far, and I hope the weather and the adaptation to the changes in the weather are favorable to you, and you are adapting well to the winter. I still find it a little bit cold. Today is December 1st, 2024. Things go by so fast. Just one more month and it will be 2025. And yesterday I was just speaking with Brother Lawrence in the back, and I realized that somebody that I saw earlier, one of the people who had one of the friends, young friends who had passed away, was only 1 year older than me, born in 1999. And I realized myself that, they would be 26 this year, and meaning I would be 25. And it's been already almost 25 years of my life. And although I know I'm saying that in a way that sounds like I've lived for a long time, which I haven't, but even 25 years is a big chunk of my life. So it really was a bell of mindfulness for me. Today we are continuing to study together the discourse on happiness. Hôm nay mình sẽ tiếp tục cùng nhau để học kinh Phước Đức. And the discourse on happiness, for our friends who have come for the first time, is a teaching given by the Buddha where he enumerates many conditions of happiness that we can look back at ourselves and see for ourselves that we very, very possibly and very likely have these conditions of happiness. And it's a very, very simple, very beautiful discourse taught by the Buddha, which is very, very practical as well. Myself, Brother Peter, and Brother Tyler, Thầy Hằng Tuần, have come back from India with Thầy, and sư cô Thanh Hương as well. We went to India, and we came back, I believe, around a week ago. And one thing that was really cool is I actually got to visit the place where the Buddha delivered this sermon, the place where the Buddha taught this discourse. There is a very famous monastery donated by a wealthy merchant in the Buddha's time named Anathapindika, and he bought a whole grove of beautiful trees and very, very peaceful scenery to offer to the Buddha and his monks. And we went there to Jetavana Temple. So when we went to India to visit Jetavana Temple, and of course mainly to visit all of the special places associated with the Buddha's life, one of the places we were able to visit was Jetavana. And this is where the Buddha taught this discourse. So we were able to go there and go directly almost to the Buddha's hut. It is called the Gandhakuti, and Gandhakuti means the perfumed chambers. Because in the Buddha's time, people would come to the monastery to listen to the Buddha teach, and then they would also, as a way of expressing their appreciation to the Buddha, they would bring flowers, very, very precious kinds of perfume, especially flowers and incense, and they would adorn the Buddha's hut with those offerings. So that's why it's called the scented perfume chambers. And we were able to go to the Buddha's hut and pay our respects to the place where the Buddha had rested and stayed and taught for many, many years. And the Buddha's hut is very small, my friends. It's maybe I'd say 2 meters. It's like a square, and it's about the length of a person lying down, lengthwise and widthwise, just a little bit bigger than that. So the Buddha lived in a very, very simple, his living chambers was very simple, like that. And in the time of the Buddha, he would have lived in a hut made out of thatched leaves, a thatched hut, perhaps some wood, some bricks. And then later on, the king Ashoka, the Emperor Ashoka, he came to pay respect to all of these places a few hundred years after the Buddha passed away, and he erected monuments, as well as he rebuilt many of the places that were associated with the Buddha, that the Buddha once dwelt in or once taught at, in order to preserve that for the future generations. So I was really, really happy to be able to go to Jetavana. And even going to Jetavana, I felt like it wasn't enough time for me to see everything, because not only was there the Buddha's hut, the Buddha's great disciples like Venerable Ananda, the Buddha's attendant, his hut was next to the Buddha's as well, and many other great disciples. So there's also a well that is from the time of the Buddha that still pumps out water. It's very, very cool. And I went there, and I was so excited to get water from that well. Of course, I brought a filter with me, and then when I got there, I got water from the well and put it in my filter bottle. But then I forgot that I left the instruction manual inside of the filter bottle. So when I brought the bottle back to the hotel, all of the paper in the bottle had a kind of like all of the paper in there messed up the water. So I was kind of sad that I didn't get to drink from the same well that the Buddha and the monks did, and I felt like I didn't have enough time to visit that place. So the next morning, without telling too many people, I only told one of the elder monks in my room, because I felt like I had a feeling that many people were worried for me, or would be worried if I left to go somewhere by myself. But my plan was to go to Jetavana again by myself, but secretly. So in the morning I left, and it ended up being not so secret because everybody knew about it. But then I left and we drove to Jetavana, and it was so beautiful in the morning. When we went to the gates of the monastery, it was all covered in fog, in mist. Sương mù. Lúc mà con đến tỉnh xá Kỳ Viên, lúc đó buổi sáng sớm mà mặt trời mới bắt đầu sáng thôi, mà lúc đó sương mù phủ khắp rất là đẹp. And I understood why the Buddha, and I understood especially why the monks were so happy to live in Jetavana, and how even me being there for just an hour or 30 minutes it already felt like a paradise, a heaven for me. And I can only feel how much the monks were happy to live and to practice in Jetavana monastery. It was very, very beautiful in the morning, and you couldn't see much around you unless you moved forward, because the fog was covering most of it, but that's what made it really beautiful. And there was a dog that followed me into the Buddha's hut when I went to the Buddha's hut for a second time. So aside with my journey in India, we're going to go back to what we are we're going to focus on the main thing today, and that is the discourse on happiness, taught by the Buddha one night in Jetavana monastery. The verse that we are studying this week is the 9th verse, and this is the translation. To persevere and be open to change, to have regular contact with monks and nuns, and to fully participate in Dharma discussions, this is the greatest happiness. Another alternative translation is patience, being easy to advise, sight of the samanas, the holy men, and timely discussion of the Dhamma, this is the blessing supreme. In Vietnamese, biết kiên trì phục thiện, thân cận giới xuất gia, giữ pháp đàm học hỏi là phước đức lớn nhất. Nhẫn nhục, lời hòa nhã, yết kiến các sa môn, đúng thời bàn luận pháp là điềm lành tối thượng. And from the Chinese Dhammapada, sở văn thường dục nhận, nhạo dục kiến sa môn, mỗi dạng tiếp thính thọ thị vi tối các tường. Tức là biết nhẫn nhục khi nghe điều bất như ý, có hạnh phúc mỗi khi được gặp người xuất gia, mỗi khi nghe pháp hết lòng tiếp nhận để hành trì, đó là điềm lành lớn nhất. Knowing how to practice tolerance when we hear things which we don't like, undesired or unpleasant things, receiving and practicing wholeheartedly the teachings each time we have the chance to listen to them, this is the highest auspicious omen. So, when we read the first line, patience and being patient and being easy to advise is a supreme blessing, I feel like many of us can feel this in our lives. When we have a younger brother or sister in our family, when we have children who are just somehow by nature very, very easy to advise, easy to teach, very, very patient, and we don't have to say much. Or when we do say things to advise our siblings or our young or our children, and they listen to us, then that is a blessing, or a supreme blessing for us. So you don't have to put in too much work and energy. So when we say patience, we mean patient endurance, or in the Plum Village translation, it says perseverance. When we say patience in the teachings of the Buddha, it also includes the qualities of tolerance, of endurance, and of perseverance. In Pali, the language which first was used to transmit the teachings of the Buddha after the Buddha had passed away, the word khanti, or patience, is one of the 6 of the 10 perfections. One of the 6 perfections, or in the Theravada Buddhist tradition there are 10, but is one of them. The others being giving, the perfection of giving, the perfection of upholding morality. The third one is patience. The fourth one is diligence, and then meditative concentration, and then wisdom or insight. So it's one of the 6 perfections. And why do we call them perfections? Because in order to become a Buddha, the practitioner or the bodhisattva the person who wants to become a Buddha is practicing the way to become a Buddha must perfect these so-called perfections. In order to become a Buddha, we have to be patient, but perfect that patience at a very highest degree. Practicing lifetime after lifetime after lifetime until it finally becomes perfected. And that's why when we define the Buddha, we say that the Buddha is the one who has developed the positive qualities in himself to the highest degree, the one who is complete with the highest understanding and love, with a lot of wisdom and compassion. I would like to share with you a story regarding a past life of the Buddha from the Jatakas, which are a collection of stories shared by the Buddha about his former lives. And they're kind of like fairy tales, but each tale has a lesson to be learned from. So I really enjoyed reading Jatakas when I was younger. The Buddha told this story while the Buddha was staying at Jetavana as well, about a monk who struggled with anger. And the Buddha asked this monk, how come is it that after you have become a monk, under me as your teacher, and I always share about compassion, and you've never seen me show any anger. How come you yourself let yourself succumb to your anger, become angry? And the Buddha said, even wise people long ago in the past, when they were treated with extreme cruelty, they did not let anger arise in their hearts. And this is the story told by the Buddha. Long ago, in the city of Benares, there was a king named Kalabu who was known for his harsh and cruel nature. At that time, the Bodhisattva was born into a wealthy Brahmin family. His name was Kundaka Kumara, and his family had many great riches. When Kundaka Kumara grew up, he learned all the important teachings of that time and lived as a lay householder. After his parents passed away, he looked at the treasure they had left behind and thought, my family worked hard to gather this wealth, but now that they are gone, they could not take anything with them. I too will leave this world one day, and instead of clinging to it, I think I should give it to people who truly need it. So, with a sincere heart, he gave away all his wealth to those deserving of help. Then, seeking a life of simplicity and wisdom, he left his home and became an ascetic. He went to live in the Himalayas, sustaining himself on the fruits of the forest and dedicating his life to meditation and reflection. After many years, Kundaka Kumara came down from the mountains and traveled to Benares. He stayed in a royal park, living quietly and going into the city each day to beg for food. One day, he came to the house of the commander-in-chief. The commander was struck by the ascetic's calm demeanor and respectful presence. Feeling inspired, he invited him into his home, offered him food, and then requested him to stay in the royal park. One day, King Kalabu entered the royal park with his harem after drinking heavily. He ordered his servants to prepare a seat, and there he lay down with his head on the lap of his favorite consort while the musicians and dancers performed to entertain him. But soon the king fell asleep. The women, left to themselves, wandered off into the park. There they saw Kundaka Kumara sitting quietly under a tree. Drawn to his serene presence, they approached him respectfully and asked, "Venerable sir, please teach us something meaningful." Kundaka Kumara humbly shared his practice and taught on the practice of patience and kindness to them. Meanwhile, the king woke up and found himself alone. Angry, he demanded, "Where have the women gone?" His consort replied, "Your Majesty, they're listening to an ascetic under that tree." Furious, the king grabbed his sword and stormed towards Kundaka Kumara, determined to punish him. The king shouted, "What are you teaching, monk?" Kundaka Kumara replied gently, "Your Majesty, I'm teaching the practice of patience, the strength to remain calm and not become angry, even when one faces harm or unkindness. The king mocked him. We'll see how much patience you really have. He called his executioner and ordered, whip this ascetic with thorny branches. The executioner obeyed, and Kundaka Kumara's back was torn by the lashes. But he did not complain. The king sneered, where's your patience now? Kundaka Kumara replied softly, Your Majesty, patience is not something that can be destroyed by pain. It lives in the heart. The king grew even angrier and ordered, cut off his hands. The executioner carried out the order, but Kundaka Kumara remained calm. The king demanded again, what happened to your patience? Kundaka Kumara said humbly, Your Majesty, my patience is not to be found in my hands. It is in my heart, where it cannot be touched. The king then ordered his feet, his nose, and ears to be cut off. Each time, Kundaka Kumara spoke gently, my patience is not in my body. It is deep in my heart. Finally, the king struck him in the chest with his foot and shouted, let's see if you can still preach patience. When the king left, the commander-in-chief came to Kundaka Kumara, cleaned his wounds, and said with sadness, Reverend Sir, please forgive the king and spare the people of this land. And Kundaka Kumara replied, may the king live long. Those who practice patience do not hold any anger in their hearts, no matter what happens to them. As the king was leaving the park, the earth trembled. Near the garden gate, the ground split open, and flames from the deepest hell, Avicii, rose up and wrapped the king like a red robe. The earth swallowed him, and he fell into endless torment. Kundaka Kumara, though his body was broken, passed away peacefully. The people of Benares mourned him deeply and honored his memory and said, such patience and kindness cannot be forgotten. After telling the story, the Buddha said, Devadatta was the cruel King Kalabu in that life. Sariputta was commander-in-chief, and I was the ascetic who taught patience. He added, patience is the greatest strength. While anger destroys, patience protects the heart and brings peace. At the end of the teaching, the angry monk realized the truth and attained a higher state of understanding. Many others also gained insight. So we can see through this story, although it's very extreme, but we can see through this example how much patience and how incredibly big a heart of a Buddha really is. And then we look at our own moments of anger and impatience in our daily lives, and we think, are these moments of anger really worth holding on to? Are they really worth being that much affected by? Although it is very extreme, but it is a beautiful story which can continue to inspire us. Thầy always says, I think there's three kinds of people. There's người tầm thường, người phi thường, and người bất thường. This is what Thầy always says. In English, the message is, if someone says something to offend you, and you respond by saying something offensive back, that is ordinary. You're an ordinary person. If someone says something to offend you, but you are able to take it lightly and change them with compassion, this is extraordinary. And if someone says nothing offensive to you, hasn't said anything to offend you, hasn't done anything to wrong you, but you actively seek out and say something to offend that person, then you're nuts. You're crazy, right? So that are the three kinds of people. And of these three types of people, we want to be the extraordinary person. And in order to be a Buddha, we also have to be an extraordinary person. The Buddha was a person, a human being, but he was an extraordinary human being. Patience can be touched once we are able to realize that all things are impermanent. The other person and you are not separate, because we, just as much as others, and others just as much as ourselves, are poisoned regularly by what? By greed, hatred, and ignorance. And that is why when people are poisoned with greed, hatred, and ignorance, they can only suffer with that pain and cause other people around them to suffer with them as well. And seeing this, we're able to help forgive them. But that's not all. Help to transform them. Just like in the discourse on the 8 realizations, we heard that poverty is the source of the reason why we suffer is because we are poor in understanding. We suffer through the poverty of being poor of wisdom. We are deprived of understanding. And you can see the king. The king was, as a king, he's a very rich person, but he was very poor in his manners, right? He was very, very poor in his practice of patience, his sanity. So we can see that poverty not only comes in physical things, but poverty can also be the poverty of our mind as well. There is also another kind of patience, which is just the outer show of patience. Although we are patient or we are tolerant, but it's because we are scared or because we haven't found the right time to take revenge yet. So we're ready to tolerate that person for now. But watch out, because once I get my chance, then you will have to suffer just as much as I have suffered. And that's another kind of tolerance, but that tolerance doesn't come from within our heart. And it's not pure tolerance, pure patience. Like I shared earlier, we can only touch the true inner patience by being able to understand things and being able to have a heart of great compassion. This is what I heard the other day from a small clip where the Zen master Thich was talking about compassion. If we know that it is because that person has too much suffering, that is why when they speak words of frustration, speaking harsh words of blame, criticism, condemning and accusing us. So we know the roots of that are the suffering. If that person did not suffer, then naturally their words would be loving and harmonious. Because they have too much suffering, each sentence they speak shoots out venom. When we have the mind of compassion and love, then we are given protection by that compassion. Whether others insult us or say anything, it cannot affect us. Compassion and loving kindness are qualities that protect us. And when we have the heart of compassion, the other person might yell, curse, or scream at us, but we just pity them with compassion. How sad. What kind of person has to bear such suffering? What kind of person doesn't even have the capacity to speak even a few loving sentences? Then we are no longer the victim of those words because we have received protection from our mind of compassion. So our compassion is kind of like armor for us. Just like what the Buddha said in the Jataka, when the Buddha said, patience is the greatest strength. And while anger destroys, patience protects the heart and it brings peace. And we always hear the saying in English, patience is a virtue, right? Some people say that patience is a sign of weakness. And I was looking online for available sources of information to put together this talk. And to be honest with you, sometimes I do go on Reddit to see what people, to see their opinions on different things. And on Reddit, there's this thing where there's this thread called Change My Mind. And then they write something like, patience is a weakness, change my mind. And then many people go on there to discuss and debate and to try to change that person's mind on their stance. So people do think that patience is a sign of weakness. But I'd like to say otherwise. And patience Like His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that patience, tolerance, compassion is a sign of strength, of inner strength. Because we win a battle that is within ourselves, which many, many people cannot win. And this kind of person who can be patient is very, very rare. When we are patient, then we transform others through our patience. It's really easy to talk back, to retaliate, to be the normal person, the ordinary person, but to be the extraordinary person, that is something that requires a lot of strength, a lot of inner strength, and a lot of courage. So patience isn't a sign of weakness. However, when we speak of patience, we also remember that in the teachings of the Buddha, love always goes with understanding. So although we accept others and we are patient with them, and we sometimes are willing to accept some suffering, knowing that they are suffering as well, but it doesn't mean that we just take everything in and allow others to abuse us. And it doesn't mean that toxic relationships are okay and we should be patient with that person and not do anything about it, of course. In the Lotus Sutra, something that we've been chanting every night lately, there's a chapter called the chapter on the peaceful practices, Phẩm An Lạc Hạnh. And it talks about, in this chapter, 4 main things that a bodhisattva, person who is on the path to becoming a Buddha, needs to practice if they want to be able to share the meaning, to share the meaning of the Lotus Sutra to others and to help others to practice this sutra. I would like to read it in Vietnamese, just so that our uncles and aunties also can follow along with us. Thì những buổi tối gần đây thì ở chùa chúng con đang tụng phẩm những phẩm ở trong kinh Pháp Hoa, và lần trước thì mình đã tụng xong một phẩm gọi là phẩm An Lạc Hạnh. Thì trong phẩm đó Đức Phật ngài dạy có 4 cái sự an trú mà một vị Bồ Tát muốn đem kinh Pháp Hoa đến với đời, muốn cho mọi người nhận được là mọi người có thể thành Phật, cần phải làm, cần phải an trú. Và đây là một đoạn nhỏ ở trong kinh. 1. An trụ nơi hành xứ và nơi thân cận xứ của Bồ Tát, thời có thể vì chúng sanh mà diễn nói kinh này. Văn thù sư lợi, thế nào gọi là chỗ hành xứ của Đại Bồ Tát? Nếu vị Đại Bồ Tát an trụ trong nhẫn nhục, hòa diệu, khéo thuận không vụt chạc, lòng cũng chẳng kinh sợ, lại ở nơi Pháp không phân biệt mà quán tưởng như thực của các Pháp, cũng chẳng vinh theo, chẳng phân biệt, đó gọi là chỗ hành xứ của Bồ Tát. Nhưng mình thấy ở trong đây là nhẫn nhục nó không phải là mình khuất phục, hoặc là nhẫn nhục không có nghĩa là mình nhu nhược. Như nhẫn nhục mình phải có sự không kinh sợ ở trong nhẫn nhục đó nữa. Có nhẫn nhục thì mình mới tạo được an lạc cho mình, và nhờ như vậy thì người khác mới được an lạc theo. Và tuy vậy nhưng mà khi mà mình thực tập thì sự nhẫn nhục thì mình phải có khả năng để chuyển hóa những cái điều mà mình nhẫn, cũng như là mình phải có sự nhu hòa chứ không phải là sự nhu nhược. Và đừng vì bạo lực mà mình khuất phục hay là tuân theo. So what the passage is essentially saying is, when we have patience, our patience is a kind of patience that is fearless. Our tolerance is a tolerance that is a kind of tolerance that is not giving in to the violence of others. And not because of violence do we follow what others want us to do, or we allow others to treat us violently or unkindly. But we have a kind of loving kindness towards others, a kind of compassion that protects ourselves and the other person. Like, for example, if one person hits us, or one person cusses at us or swears at us, and we swear back and we hit back, then we'll just keep hitting each other. Or we'll hit each other until one of us gets really, really badly hurt. But if another person hits us, and instead of hitting them back, and we, just like our children, when they hit each other, we always say, when they get into a fight, we always say, next time you shouldn't hit your little brother, even if he hit you, because if you guys both hit each other, then you guys are gonna get both hurt. Next time, when he hits you, what you should do is come to tell mom, come to tell dad. We always teach this to our children. So this kind of patience is a patience that has great compassion and also is fearless. And again, with regards to the story, this is a very intense application of tolerance or patience. The Buddha, in order to become a Buddha, had to perfect his patience to that highest degree. But in our daily lives, we can also practice patience as well. Not to the extent of the Buddha, maybe like letting people cut off our limbs and stuff like that, but we can be patient with other things in life. Like, for example, training ourselves to be able to breathe and smile when we're waiting in a lineup for something, or to be able to enjoy our time when we're stuck in traffic. Patience with our children, something that is very realistic as well. And one thing that I feel like I lean towards more is that in the teaching of children, physical discipline is not essential. And prove me wrong, but I believe it is not essential because one simple fact, the Buddha never did that. The Buddha never did that to any of his monks. The Buddha never did that to any of the young monks in the Sangha. And you cannot imagine an arahant physically disciplining a junior in the Sangha. So the Buddha was able to help people with his great wisdom and his great compassion. And if we continue to use violence or use physical discipline as a way of teaching, then that will just water the seeds of physical violence in us more and more. And we teach our children that it's okay to hit people when they do something wrong, and it's not okay to hit people. As well as if we have more understanding, just like in Buddhism, understanding and love are the two most important elements, very, very precious elements of the Dharma, wisdom and compassion. And we understand that kids, their brains are still developing, and we can't expect them to be exactly like we are, because if we do, then that's unrealistic, it's unwise, and it's unhealthy. And teaching in a way that is well thought out is not well thought out and rushed, reacting instead of responding, it could do more harm than good. Nowadays, we have lots of resources, scientific studies, which show many, many other approaches to teaching other than physical discipline. It's just like, for practical reasons, nowadays we shouldn't have to boil water with wood and make a fire, because we already have boilers in our houses. So we don't have to go back to things which people once did in the past, because there was not enough understanding. Just before I end, I'm just waiting on our teacher. It doesn't seem like he's here yet, but before I end, I wanted to tell you another short story, a real life story. When we went to Sri Lanka, we were given a very, very small sapling of a Bodhi tree. And the Bodhi tree is the tree which the Buddha sat beneath to meditate, and eventually he attained awakening underneath that tree. So the Bodhi tree in India was destroyed many, many times, but the original Bodhi tree in India, before anything happened to it, was the daughter of King Ashoka. She took a small sapling of the Bodhi tree to Sri Lanka and planted it there. So the Bodhi tree in Sri Lanka is actually almost the Buddha's age. It's 2,300 years old. And so we're able to obtain a baby Bodhi tree, a descendant of the original Bodhi tree. And as soon as Thai was able to obtain it, and somehow it just fell into my hands. One of the sisters gave it to me, and I was so happy. And I cared for it like it was a real baby. I didn't want anything to happen to it. I didn't want it to be cold. I wanted it to survive because we had 5 days left in Sri Lanka. And on the whole ride home from Anuradhapura to our hotel, I held the Bodhi tree in my hands in the front seat in front of me, and even when I was falling asleep, I held it tight because I didn't want it to fall. And in the end, when we got back to the hotel, our hotel had a lot of monkeys because it was smack dab in the middle of the wilderness. So the monkeys are very mischievous, and if you leave your things outside, the monkeys will come and take them, or they won't leave your stuff alone. So they warned us, don't leave anything outside on the balcony. And then I was thinking what I should do, because the Bodhi tree it's not good for the Bodhi tree to be in a cold environment, being a plant that thrives in a humid environment. But if I put it on the balcony, then the monkeys will play with it. So I went onto Google and ChatGPT, and I typed out how to take care of a Bodhi tree sapling. And I did all the things that I could to take care of it. I took a plastic bag and I covered the sapling, made sure that the plastic bag didn't touch any of the leaves, to shelter it from the air conditioning, because the brothers in the room are very hot and they turned up the air conditioning and the fan, so it was very, very bad for the tree. I didn't want it to be shocked in temperature. Then I took my jacket and I wrapped it around the base of the plant, and I put it right beside my bedside just to make sure that nothing happened to it at night, checking on it. And in the morning when the sun rose, I tried to wake up early and bring the tree out into the open sun and sit with the tree in the open sun so then the tree could take a sun bath. And I had to be near it, because if I wasn't, then the monkeys would come and steal the tree. So I took care of it very, very, very wholeheartedly. And in the end, on one trip going home from a certain place, I decided to bring the Bodhi tree with me on the bus, because I thought if I left it in the room, it's too cold. But if I brought it on the bus, then it would be less cold, because sometimes the air condition is on and off. So I took it on the bus, and for the whole ride, I held the Bodhi tree in my hands, making sure that it wouldn't slip. There was this one moment, it took only 1 minute. I was searching up something on my phone to learn about the next place that we were going to, and the car abruptly stopped and the Bodhi tree fell towards me, and the sapling turned upside down on my lap. And at that point, my heart almost fell out of my chest, because I took so much care of it, and yet in 1 minute, just 1 minute, that happened. Another plant, when I came back to the temple, that I received was a night blooming jasmine. And I brought it from here to the monastic residence, and I thought, it should be okay, It came with a plastic bag, but I totally forgot about it, that you have to cover the tree with plastic, or else the tree is going to be in temperature shock, especially in Canada. But I was like, if I'm okay, the tree should be okay. And I brought it from here to the residence, and the next morning, almost all of the leaves became dry, like crisp dry, and turned colors. So that taught me a lesson. And the lesson that I learned from that is the people in our lives are kind of like the Bodhi tree. Sometimes we spend a lot of love and effort and care to take care of those people. And even doing that, one day, inevitably, and according to the law of impermanence, of course, one day they'll have to say goodbye to us. And when they do say goodbye to us, we don't know when they're going to say goodbye. We don't know what thing is going to happen to that person. So even taking care of it with a lot of love like that, I still regretted it deeply when the Bodhi tree fell into my lap, upside down. So it reminded me to remember that if taking care of someone that much is not enough, then how can I expect to just be, that person will be fine, they're just like me, and we put our unrealistic applications on other people. The tree itself is a sapling. the night blooming jasmine was a sapling, and I can't expect it to be a human being like me to be able to withstand the cold. It's just not realistic. So the people around us are sometimes the same. Our children, our partner, our brothers and sisters, sometimes they just haven't developed the capacity, they haven't grown and matured enough to take on what we can take on. So this taught me the lesson to not expect others to be the way we want others to be. And within this lesson, it also taught me that acceptance means love, means patience, means to nurture and to grow. Because I really, really valued the Bodhi tree, I took my time to take care of it. And I took my time to take care of the jasmine plant after it became frozen as well. But through this, taking care of the plant is a way of showing my love, showing my patience. And that's why in any relationship, when we say that we love others, we have to be patient with them. There's a very famous teaching that Zen Master Thích Pháp taught, and that is, patience is a mark of true love. When we really love someone, we will be patient for that person. When we were little, and I think I know this because I'm around little kids a lot, and they ask a lot of questions. They ask a lot of questions, and sometimes you just wish that they would stop. And sometimes I've seen before elderly people in their old age, they mumble a lot of things, they say a lot of things, which they just do it because of their old age. And then other people, their children are not happy or are angered or feel unpleasant because of the amount of talking that the elderly person might be doing. But they forget that when they were little, they were exactly the same, if not even worse. So when we see that our parents, for example, when we were little, our parents answered every single question that we had for our parents without being angry, or at least they tried their very, very best to do that. Then in their old age, we will also be patient with them as well. When they lose their memory, when they might utter many things, or might find someone to talk to feel like their story is valued, to feel like there's still people who care, then we should also give back the same amount of patience. So thank you so much for your listening, and I hope that we can practice patience together, and I hope that you have a good weekend as well. Thank you so much for your listening.
Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Kính thưa thầy chúng, hôm nay là ngày Chủ nhật sinh hoạt hàng tuần. Sau khi chúng ta tụng kinh nghe pháp, thầy trò cũng mới vừa từ bên Ấn Độ trở về sau một chuyến hành hương thăm Đức Phật. Thì Pháp Hòa vừa về tới nhà thì có Phật sự bên Mỹ liền, cho nên coi như là đi liền, sau mấy tiếng họ trở về thì qua Mỹ để có khóa tu và pháp thoại. Thưa đại chúng, hành hương Đức Phật là một trong những cái sinh hoạt của tất cả Phật tử ai hữu duyên. Cho nên lần này có 170 người đi tháp tùng, đi đến 4 chỗ mà quan trọng trong cuộc đời của Đức Phật. Đó là đi thăm Lâm Tỳ Ni, nơi Đức Phật đản sinh, nơi Đức Phật ngồi thiền thành đạo, tức là Bồ Đề Đạo Tràng, nơi Đức Phật nói pháp lần đầu tiên, đó là thành Ba La Nại,
vườn Lộc Uyển, và cuối cùng là đến thành Kushinaga, Kauthina, nơi Đức Phật Niết Bàn. Thì đó là 4 chỗ quan trọng. Ngoài ra còn thăm viếng các nơi khác như núi Linh Thú, tịnh xá Trúc Lâm, tịnh xá Kỳ Viên. Và lần này có đi Tích Lan, nơi mà Phật giáo được truyền về đó sau Đức Phật Niết Bàn. Thì lần này chúng ta cũng có làm từ thiện do quý Phật tử gửi để làm từ thiện ở Ấn Độ, ở Tích Lan. Và ngoài chúng ta phát gạo, phát tiền cho những người nghèo khó, chúng ta còn làm giếng để cho những nơi mà bị thiếu nước, người ta có nước người ta dùng. Thì hôm nay ngày Chủ nhật, Pháp Hòa chỉ ra thăm đại chúng và mừng được trở về chùa và chúc đại chúng cuối tuần an lạc. Bây giờ chúng ta chuẩn bị đi qua để cúng linh. Tại bây giờ nói thì không có giờ để nói, thì thôi thì mình nghỉ ngơi rồi cúng linh. Cảm ơn đại chúng. Rồi quý vị nghe tiếng chuông soi chân rồi qua cúng linh ha. Dạ.